Welcome back to episode 3 of Above the Horizon. Today we're going to talk about privacy and technology and, in general, privacy in the modern day. I'm Halvar and I'm here with Jasper. And yeah, Jasper, what do you think about today's topic?
Yeah, I think another really interesting topic, very relevant for today, because it's a big topic everywhere in the world. There is a big balance between privacy, freedom, and other priorities online. And how do we balance this? Um, you know, it's good to talk about the some of the important underlying principles, of the reasons why we need privacy in a democracy. What? Yeah, I think for me personally, I value very deeply that we need to have a strong respect towards privacy as a fundamental tenet in society. Without privacy, I think a lot of things don't function properly, and I think therefore it's very important to talk about this properly.
Yeah, no, I agree. And let's be honest, we're quite biased in the sense, right? We want
Of
privacy.
course.
We are fans of privacy, and we want to present maybe I think a more accurate image of privacy in today's age. Like, of course, try to understand a bit deeper what it is, but um, let's say bring about the concerns that we have with regards to privacy and how things are developing. So let's jump straight to why do we need privacy? Why do you think we need privacy? Why does it matter?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, without privacy, it becomes very hard to find out who you really are. I feel
Mhm.
that for me, if I'm always watched, if someone is always watching, um, it's impossible to really explore yourself, explore your thoughts, because there's always this feeling that someone might judge what you're doing, that someone may interpret something in the wrong way, whatever, and therefore there's not this complete freedom to explore and to really develop yourself. I think this is fundamentally for me why I value why we need a form of privacy. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, the it's a good point about this concept of how to become an individual, right? And maybe you need to test some things that don't necessarily want everyone around you to know in order to find out who you are. And and also, I think you can talk about like why do people need to know, right? Why don't I have the right to just say, okay, well, I want everything to be private, right? Uh,
yeah,
why would there ever be a need to to share things and to share who you are? But I agree, like from a personal standpoint, without
yeah.
privacy, like you can't explore thoughts, ideas, maybe opinions. Also, we change, we adapt, we evolve. Uh,
Uh-huh.
I certainly don't believe the same things that I believed a long time ago, but if it's all non-private or something like that, then there is a risk that you will always be responsible for everything, let's say, that
You will be
happened in your
judged.
past. Yeah, you'll be
You will be
judged,
judged
exactly.
today for things that you might have done a long time ago, right? Or there's something that is, it's like it's not a part of me anymore, or maybe I believe some of it, but I don't believe all the things, or
Yeah,
yeah. Um, and I think a
yeah.
lot of
Actually,
people, I think a lot of people say, I have nothing to hide. There's not a problem for privacy because I'm not doing anything illegal. It's okay. The government or everyone, they can know everything about me, my medical record, I don't know, I have nothing to hide, right? But I think this is a very, very dangerous fallacy to get into. And I think therefore it's good to really talk about this and to show, like, you know, that this is not the case.
yeah, yeah. I remember hearing someone mention like I wish we didn't. Well, I'm glad we didn't have phone cameras when I was in school. Someone said that, and it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's just this idea that nowadays, everything you can do, like people can pull out their camera in 1 second and they can film you doing it, right? So it really limits what you're kind of allowing yourself to do, and it touches
Um,
on the same thing, right? Like as kids, even you start self-regulating yourself because the kid right next to you could be filming you, and then it'll be there
Uh,
forever. They'll be stored somewhere forever.
yeah, yeah, it creates the self-regulating effect, right? Because you feel like you might be watched.
Yeah,
I think for me, I also have experienced some of these feelings, where it's like, there's the camera or there's the option of it being on camera, and you know, it feels different. You're not allowed to express yourself as
no,
openly, as freely as just with a group of friends, and there's this inherent thing that, we don't share everything. This is a group of friends. You're allowed to say things, but we're not going to tell everyone else, right? We're not going to tell your parents or whatever,
no.
right? It's a group. And yeah, I I think this goes, now we're talking about the personal, but there's also like the bigger societal aspect, right? In any kind of democracy, uh, or in any society, I think you need the ability for groups to form, to be able to challenge the narrative. And I think without privacy, it's very hard for these kinds of groups to form.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think it makes sense, right? I mean, if you can't, on an individual scale, if you can't express yourself truly because of a lack of privacy, then on a group scale, a group can't express itself either, right?
yeah,
Depending on whoever is in control of whatever is deemed to be imposing your privacy. On a
yeah,
group scale, a smaller group might be dissenters, right? They might be revolutionaries. They might have ideas that truly counter the status quo or whatever is accepted. And I think if we look back at history, we often praise those people, because maybe they brought down the evil system, or, they changed it for the betterment of the people or
yeah,
something like that. And then you start to think, well, that makes it a necessity, right? That groups are able to form and express
yeah,
themselves with opinions and ideas that truly counter the accepted way of
yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, I think if you don't have this, you don't have a truly free society,
Yeah,
because then you create the society where you're like, oh, we have all this freedom, but it's all open, right? And everyone
yeah.
everyone can see everything. And it's like, is that true? Is that really a free society, or is it the opposite? Yeah,
I think I can
and
claim pretty strongly it's not a free society. Because
yeah,
I think, yeah, if everything is open, like, are you free? No, you're kind of at the, you are you're at the power of being judged by anyone and anything out there for
yeah,
whatever means necessary, right? So you can think of a very practical example would be like, if I say something that a certain bank doesn't like, they could block me from getting a loan, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
their right. They can choose who their customers are,
yeah,
but is that something that should be possible?
yeah,
Like you said in the friend group, people can choose not to like you, or they can choose not to trust you, or they can stop being friends with you, or they can just never become friends with you, right? So in a very personal sense, we do have the same
yeah,
some self-regulation, right? You express certain things, you block certain things, but it becomes a very different thing now, especially with like internet and media, right? Where it's just out there in forever, and you can talk about government and private companies and whatever other organizations, and they have access to things that you already maybe struggle with judging on a very personal basis.
yeah. And I think it gets into the very root necessity of a human being to be able to set boundaries, to be able
Yeah,
to claim like, this is mine, this is for me, this is my world, and that out there is the world from other people.
yeah,
It's I think, growing up, puberty, it's also a lot about this, right? You go through puberty in order to create an entity that's different from your parents, right? That's its own thing, with its own thoughts, its own ideas, that maybe other people don't agree with, but that's very important development to make.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think like it touches on two things, right? Like the one thing earlier is this ability to explore, right? If you're not free from consequences by everyone for everything you do, then you will not explore, right? So you might not become your true self. You might not find the ideas, opinions, values, actions, behaviors that really align with you, you know? Like you're too bound by some kind of what is acceptable thing. And then there's
Yeah,
also this thing you say about kind of claiming your own space, right? This
yeah,
um, not everything is for everyone, you know, and we
no,
know it on
we're
a
all
personal
different.
level. And, you know, you talk differently to your parents than you do to your friends, than you do to
Yeah,
your girlfriend or boyfriend, than you do to your children. You know, we all have different, you know, uh, faces or like boundaries or whatever
yeah,
with different groups
sure.
of people.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think definitely, these are some of the fundamental reasons of why we as humans, have really a need for privacy and have a need for
Yeah,
creating our boundaries, right? And becoming a person, individuating. Mm, I do think, to also highlight the other side, right? In society, there are definitely some necessary limits for privacy. I don't know
yeah,
if you have some specific things you would like to
yeah,
highlight,
yeah. I think there's always this sense that, well, uh, the government maybe they should have some insight into who you are, right? They need to probably know that you exist as a person, right? Um, if you talk about, you can talk about the benefits and cons of it maybe, but like we all have
Uh,
national IDs, right? Like we know your birth date, we know maybe your blood type, or we know your age, your family heritage. The government knows it. They know who belongs within the society. You can talk about passports and borders and the ability to actually have a citizenship, right? You can talk
uh,
about the idea that people can't just impersonate everyone for very serious governmental functions, right? Um, there are definitely good arguments for that and for the government to know this. Um, and also, the government is
yeah,
well, this is where it gets difficult, but they're also responsible for, you know, preventing crime or
yeah.
ensuring people are safe and ensuring
I
like
think
laws are like people are. If there are serious consequences to your actions, the government is usually the one that enforces it, right? So they for sure have some
100%.
good motivation to know things that are going on.
It's about the principles of accountability. No, like you cannot just in a democratic in a society, right? You're living together. Everyone
Yeah,
has a need to develop themselves, but you also have a responsibility towards society. And if you commit crimes, if you're doing things that are really against the law, like committing fraud or these kinds of things, there needs to be a certain amount of transparency in this, right? There
yeah,
needs to be some things that prevent a bad faith actor from exploiting society. And
yeah,
I think therefore that is fundamentally the need why government needs to have certain insights. And the other way around, it's also about, government also doesn't deserve pure privacy. It deserves some amount of privacy because, for example, in international relations, I don't think it's a good idea that, our government exposes everything, because if it exposes
no,
all its tactics to our public, then the other governments will know the same, and you lose all your tactical advantage.
yeah,
However, there's also, for all other things, I think government should be as transparent as possible towards the public. But there's
yeah.
also this kind of a balance, and
I'd like to add on top of that also the military, right? In a classic sense, even pre-government, you could argue, the military that protects the nation or goes to war against someone else, right? They have an inherent need, like almost for your own survival, you know, for the survival of your citizens, need to
yeah,
keep tactics, to keep intelligence secret, because you never know who can dissent, you never know who's a spy, right? There are all these really
for
correct
sure,
arguments, I would say,
yeah,
to keep things secret from on a governmental level or something similar.
right. And it's a balance, I think, between some form of authoritarianism that is necessary in any society. Society cannot just be run only from the ground up with everyone knowing everything.
Yeah,
That's very much an illusion, right? And then
Yeah,
the other hand is a fully authoritarian regime where they are surveying everything that we are doing, right? Where they know exactly, in theory, they could know when we move from place A to place B, what we talked
yeah,
about, the things we liked online. I think this is very much the opposite end. And then the question is, where should this balance lie, right?
yeah.
And about finding this balance and properly highlighting the different aspects for both
I
of these
I feel like
sides.
we're gonna conclude throughout the episode constantly that yeah, it's about balance, right? Because it's gonna be
Yes.
about balance. This is such a key thing. Is like there's no answer. Where is the limit? You know, what counts as sufficient privacy? What is perfect privacy? There's no perfect privacy. It's contextual, and the government wants certain things. The people want certain things. Organizations want certain things, and in the end we're going to come back to a balance, right? And like we say, there are good moral arguments for why you can't have perfect privacy, right? And I think
Yeah,
everyone can
for
see
sure.
that. And also,
Yeah.
just to point to earlier, we talked about exploring as a person, right? Finding yourself. Well, there are psychopaths that finding themselves would explore, really, really bad actions that we
Yeah,
don't want citizens to do, that we don't want in a functioning society.
for
And
sure.
if they had perfect privacy, then, it wouldn't really
Yeah.
be a good way of ruling a people, would it?
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I think we can also talk about how this expands into today, right? Let's be honest, we're talking about privacy, and it's a pretty big topic nowadays, with regards to the digital world, internet, media, data collection everywhere by governments, by private companies, by other organizations. Um, it's becoming a serious like problem, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, what we talked about it a little bit, right? Or the surveillance, right? The ability for the state to surveil us. It's not necessary that they use it, but the with the growth of technology, the power asymmetry between government, between the big tech firms and the regular user has just grown bigger, right? And
Yeah,
with great power comes great responsibility, you know. They need to act on this data with integrity, with openness, allowing dissenting information to spread, even if they don't agree with it, you know. But that's a very, very hard thing. Yeah.
yeah. It seems
And
like this natural motivation, right, is that things can be fixed if you know what is going on, right? And the government will use that same
yeah,
power. Private organizations will use the same. Well, okay, let's split first. Private organizations, they have different motivations, probably, right? Most of their motivations are around money, and with more data, more insights on you, they can probably make more money. The
yeah,
obvious example is more targeted ads, right? More high value targeting for selling. That's the obvious example. And when it comes to government, I mean, well, let's just, you can put out the basic example that if I'm going to fight terrorism or I'm going to fight criminals in my country, then there's a pretty obvious argument that I should know everything about everyone all the time. Because that way I can catch them early before anything bad happens.
yeah,
And it's also a good idea to sell, right, to the people. You say, well, we could have stopped this terrorist attack, or we could have stopped this criminal from committing their crimes if we knew their movements at all times. But because we don't know who they are, we need to know all your movements at all times. Um,
yeah.
and
This
yeah,
is very much the danger, right? Because they would like to know as much as possible. They would like
yeah,
in this ideal concept of the state, you know, the state is the good actor. They feel morally good, like they're helping society, and they're fighting against all this terrorism, this dissent, these things. Where some of these groups, well, it's pretty good that they fight against this, right? It's good that they fight against pedophilia. It's good that they fight against fraud. It's good that they fight against terrorism, right? But I think it's very easy to get caught up in this and to go then to the extreme of thinking you need all the data of all citizens as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is what we see nowadays everywhere throughout the world. We see it in China with their system nearing a social credit system with automatic deactivation of certain things. We see it here in the West, in Europe with certain chat control regulations, not allowing people to have encrypted conversation. And in the US, I mean, they're spying on literally everyone. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
the U.S. famously has this, counter. I believe it's the Patriot Act, right? Which is the
could be
counter-terrorism. Like we essentially to prevent terrorism, we need to monitor everyone, right? That's the argument. And
after 9/11 that all came up, right? After 9/11,
uh,
they went
yeah,
way more. They implemented a bunch of rules that allowed it's the
yeah,
fight on terror, right? They implement a lot of things in order to be able to, well, fight terrorism. Logical thing. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
But it also, I think, it started even earlier because I'm pretty sure the argument was that, like the NSA and well, especially I think the NSA was created as a war group, all right? Like it was intelligence services for the
during
war,
the Second World War. Yeah,
exactly, Second World War.
yeah,
And this has always been the case, right? During war, governments take more power and they say we need to invest more resources. We're going to put up spy agencies. We're going to put up military intelligence units, right? And then they realized, I think after World War II, they were like, well, to prevent further war or to make sure that we're
yeah.
always like on top of it, we're going to keep these as permanent powers. And I think that's essentially how it started.
True.
As now we just know them as intelligence agencies that are part of every
Yeah,
government. But before that was more like a during war thing.
yeah.
Um,
I agree with that. And I think I think we can name this phenomenon crisis creep,
yeah,
It's there's a certain crisis, there's a very realistic response, right? In the moment. Like during the Second World War, right? You need all this intelligence on everyone, right? It makes a lot of sense. You want to win the war
yeah.
against fascism.
And
And
then
then
you have other
afterwards,
examples.
a certain amount is reduced, but a certain amount stays, right? And these people also want to survive because it's their jobs are on the line, their power is on the line, right? The head of these they want to stay there. So you get a new, very powerful lobby group, right? A lobby group with
Yeah,
information on everyone. Try to get that out of government again. You have to really fight for that, right? It's possible,
yeah,
but you really have to fight against that. And if you're not aware of this, you will slowly drift into a more and more authoritarian state where the government, companies, no more.
yeah. I think this crisis creep idea, um, it's happening, right? And it's happening. I feel like it's happening all the time. Every year that goes by, every 5 years that go by, the government, especially, also private organizations, but let's say the government here, they get more insight into you. They track you more. They monitor you more. They harvest more data on you more. They analyze you more for their own benefits. But it's only going one direction. And if we keep going this direction, what's the end state, right? If the goal is always there's some risk that exists and therefore we need to have full control over all the people, then what's the end goal? Well, the end goal is zero privacy, then, right? Because
Yeah,
if you have any sense of privacy, there is inherently some risk, right? That they might not know what you're doing and you might be a bad actor in some way or
and
another.
I think it's really a slippery slope because you also get used to it. We like I think nowadays we're kind of used to the idea that yeah, probably the state is
Yeah,
reading all
yeah,
notes that I'm taking. You know, Probably,
yeah,
yeah, but it's not really a problem anymore. Like, why would I care if the government is reading my notes? Whereas in the past, I would have taken physical notes that were in my home, right? Someone would have to break into my home in order to
yeah,
read what I'm writing about in private, my diary. But now the government has access to anyone's diary, and
yeah,
we don't even think about it. It's just natural.
yeah. it's one of those, humans are always like everything is relative to humans, right? Like a small change doesn't feel like much, but over time, big changes have occurred, and as long as the arguments are kind of going along the way, we just get used to it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's probably crazy for someone who lived in the 50s to jump to now. If they cared about privacy in the 50s and they jump to now, they
Well,
would think we're living in hell, right?
yeah. Well,
And they would feel it, right? But because it's all kind of gradual, it's also generational. There's this, as long as it happens slow, we can
yeah.
get the people along with the idea.
There are a few people always screaming against it, right? Very loudly saying we should care about this, but 95% of the people who they don't care about it because they're just living their
Yeah,
normal lives, right?
yeah.
And yeah, I think this is
I, I've okay, without getting too conspiratorial, I've seen some arguments that the internet is just essentially an invention for the military and intelligence services to track everyone. It's like the
yeah,
god dream, of having an ultimate insight into what everyone else is doing is get them all on the internet, get them to post as much data there as possible, make it all around, sharing personal things, sharing
uh,
location, sharing everything. And
yeah.
I mean, it's the dream, right, of any intelligence service from the 70s, from the
I mean, if
60s.
I would be if I would have worked in that intelligence service, they
Yeah,
created the internet, right? DARPA, they created
yeah, exactly.
it literally came from their research institutes. So I'm definitely not saying it's purely this, but you know, I would try to exploit that, right? If I
Yeah,
am in war with Russia, with China, of course, I'm gonna do
yeah.
that. I'm gonna try to get all this data on people in the world.
And also, we know that a lot of technology comes from the military, right? A lot of the front line of technology is from military research, from military funding.
Yeah.
And so, don't be surprised that the technology that we see come out is also
Yeah,
aligned with the interests of the military, of the intelligence units, and
of
ultimately
course.
of the government, right? Um,
Yeah, they've
but yeah,
definitely had a big hand in the creation of everything, right? And
exactly.
therefore it makes sense.
And then you wonder if that hand is for the benefit of humanity and technology, or if it's for their own motivations to,
And I think
for example, keep track of the population.
and I think in this case, just like with many cases, there are many different stakeholders in the creation of the internet,
Yeah,
many different people who want different things, and in the end what you get is a mixture of what all the different stakeholders who created it wanted, And
yeah.
um
And then the
yeah, I think
story
that's what
will be the good one.
yeah.
The story will be, yeah, these really, all
And
these mathematicians that loved the idea of the computer and computing,
yeah,
they were the ones that came up with all the internet history from the late 1900s, right?
yeah,
That's the story.
yeah.
Uh, and
Well, in
then,
reality, it's probably Nazi scientists in
yeah,
America.
exactly.
Like,
100%. 100%.
mhm. Yeah. Anyways, I think
Anyways,
nowadays we also see a lot of this regulation come into place. I think specifically in the EU, right? We have
yeah,
the chat control regulation.
yeah.
I don't know if you want to
Yeah, I mean,
introduce
this
that.
is a big one. And like, it's a big one. I've been aware of it for a while, but I think the general population, maybe who's not so much in tech circles or legal privacy circles, or read that kind of stuff, aren't that aware that it's happening. So essentially, the EU is trying to push a regulation, and it's quite successful. Like a lot of the countries are in line, and it's trying to. The argument is that in order to prevent like child porn exploitation or explicit like child pornography images from spreading in whatever chat groups or online whatever, the biggest risk is private messaging apps, encrypted messaging, and therefore there needs to be a filter of a sort that scans all outgoing messages at the root before it's encrypted and sent to a group chat or to a personal chat. And so they essentially want to take away encryption because all messages need to
And
be scanned, right? And
well,
well,
and I
it's
think
scanned for one thing, but who knows? It can scan everything.
and, I think it's important to highlight that there is a very strong force within the European Union that very much wants this. There is
Yeah,
like I think like 70-80% of countries are for this implementation. They
yeah,
want that companies are mandated to scan all messages between people and automatically filter them based on child pornography. It's mostly child pornography and terrorism.
yeah. Okay, but if the filtering is there, they can do whatever they want with it, right?
Yes, and it's also about mandatory age control to protect the children against, and it's
Yeah,
all from the top down, right? It's all this idea that while there are certain bad things happening in society, therefore we need a top down absolutist authoritarian measure in order to fix this, right?
yeah.
Which, yeah,
And this, like, it's the EU pushing this stuff, right? And I know that many people are pro EU regulation because they think, well, it's the best in the world, like it's on the forefront of handling the digital age or something like that. And
yeah,
many
they
people are
did a
very
bunch of good things
positive. Uh, yeah, exactly.
for
Like the
sure. Like the
GDPR is good,
GDPR,
I
it's
think.
great. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Yeah,
Um, and so many people are very pro what the EU, like the European Commission comes out with in terms of legislation, and I have a bunch of plans for digital age and handling all data and things like that.
yeah.
But
And
but
y- you know, you know about the temporary e-privacy derogation
the
that they
temporary
introduced?
e-privacy.
Do you know? It's something that they introduced during COVID times. Um, so it's a temporary thing where they not all member states had to vote for it, but it is the permission that all companies scan all messages in private apps, right? They call it voluntary scanning, so not mandatory. And this is in place. And it's been in place for 4 years, and they recently extended it by another 2 years because the chat control proposal was not in time, right? They wanted the e-privacy derogation to then be immediately followed by the other, but member states weren't for it yet. So therefore, they extended it by another 2 years with the hope that by that time, the EU chat control proposal
That's crazy.
will
That's
be
crazy.
implemented.
But uh,
Right? Talk
it's
about
crazy, but I'm not
democracy.
surprised.
Yeah.
There's all these ideas, right, that use like a good force and all these things, and I don't have to state all my opinions on the EU. That's fine, But this idea that ultimately the government, and let's be honest, however much you believe in democracy, the overall power of the government is not driven in a democratic way, and of the EU especially not.
Oh,
And this idea that the government has to be your mom or your like ultra overbearing parent that watches and takes care of everything you do, leaving zero accountability on the people themselves to behave properly, and just kind of accepting the fact that there are things about the world that are not quote unquote good, right? I mean, there are criminals and there will always be
yes.
criminals, however you define it. It's impossible to stop, but are you going to sacrifice all your privacy, for example, all your
Yeah.
freedom, for the sake of this overbearing parent trying to perfectly control criminals?
Health. Yeah. And I think to this extent, right, there might be some high value things you can do through technology, right? That
Yeah,
might help. I think the chat control proposal is definitely not one of them because it's extremely, it is a huge measure. It has such a big impact on so many lives that I think it's completely out of proportion. Um, and there might be some other proposals that are better, and we can talk about them. Um, but there's also the opposite way to fight this, and that is through building a high trust society. You know,
yeah,
it's about if we trust people around us, if we have if we build a network of high trust, it becomes also way harder for pedophiles or terrorism to actually occur because we trust one another. The you know
Yeah, it
It's
might be
just the
hard to do it on
opposite.
a complex scale, though. I guess that's the problem. It's like if you think back to when you're a small community, right? Everyone knows each other, kind of situation. Then the bad actors are shunned from the group, you know.
Yeah,
But now maybe it's too complex. Like we don't feel this community sense. We ultimately can't trust everyone because it's just way out of proportion for how many humans we can feel close to,
but
for example.
I think the real thing is in real life, it's way easier to recognize someone and to shun someone who is acting in bad faith because I think over time you notice it. He's a part of your social network. Um, and over time,
Yeah,
everyone notices like this person, he is not, he gets shunned or he gets a correction or whatever, and therefore society functions. But if everything happens online, right, it becomes way harder for this inherent recognition of these people, you know?
yeah. I mean,
Um,
if 1% of the population uh, is a is a quote unquote terrorist, and you're a
yeah,
hundred
or
people, that's
psychopath,
one
right? Or
person,
like
right?
someone,
Or
yeah,
exactly. But if you're a group of 100 people, that's one person. That person is a lone wolf. But if you're 100 million, 100 million people,
yeah,
there is plenty communities that can form online, right? With people who are really disconnected physically, but have the
yeah,
same alignment with characteristics or
yeah,
personality or interests, whatever.
yeah,
But I think ultimately you're not going to stop it anyways, right? And I don't want to sacrifice all my freedom, all my privacy for
no,
the sake of this big government who, quote unquote, is the good force, right? Is the morally right force uh, to um, to try
well,
to tackle this problem, whether their
you
intentions are
can do
good or
stuff
not.
about this. It's about proper journalism, not journalism that is owned by three, four rich companies in the world who have
Yeah,
their own incentives. We have a whole democratic system that is built around these things. But if the democratic system starts failing, if we don't adhere to the laws, if politicians are actively lying and we don't care about this, the average person doesn't care about this, then you can try to build as many technological solutions to such a problem, it will not solve it because there's something more fundamental going on, right?
yeah, yeah. It's
Uh,
a people issue, maybe instead
yes,
of
I for sure it's a people issue, not a technology issue, right?
no.
Technology will not fix it.
Yeah, it's like okay, maybe it's a bad example, but I feel like when when people are children, we accept that people are different. And then on a societal scale, when we're adults, it's like we stop accepting that there exists people who are different, things we don't like. Um, and we try to like, maybe it's especially in the West, but we try to like group everything under the same thing. My example was just if a kid is really incapable of reading, you don't force that person to sit down for 10 hours to try to read, let's say, because maybe they have some issue or something like that,
Uh-huh.
and you kind of end up accepting it. But it seems that when it comes to government regulation, we don't accept that 1% or 2% or 3% are in a worse situation, a better situation, you know, a situation we don't like or something like that. It's like we have to fix it. The government has to fix it, has to have complete 100%
Uh-huh.
coverage through its regulation of all the
Uh,
people.
you mean like there's really this desire for absolute control, right?
Yes,
For a sterile society in some ways, where like the
yes.
sterility becomes the goal.
Well, I think this is connected to the idea of at least Western governments being like the mother. It's very much like a mother energy coming out
Mm-hmm.
of the governments. And I
Yeah,
think a perfect
I
example that I
agree.
really dislike is that most of the rules, like, if you go hiking now, you might find a guardrail put up where there is a steep side or something like that.
Yeah,
Or you might have to, as an adult, you can get stopped by the police if you're not wearing a helmet and biking or something like that. And I'm not saying it's a good idea to not be wearing a helmet, maybe, but the
no, but I
police
love
doesn't
this
have to stop
example.
me as a functioning adult from doing what I want in this
I
sense.
think it's a great example. If I want to cycle on my bike without helmet, right? I want to do that. It's the same with ice skating. If I want to ice skate, or if I want to go skiing without helmet,
Yeah,
you know, it's my problem. And like, sure, you can make some kind of an argument about health costs, right? Health insurance, but then people are eating sugars and eating so bad,
yeah.
having such a bad lifestyle. Like, I think that's such a no argument.
No,
It's
and I think the philosophy comes from that there are 3% that are in the extreme, maybe extreme stupid or extreme uncaring or whatever other characteristic, right? And if
yeah.
and because of that, you will say, well, there are these 3% of people who are falling off the mountain cliff, when they're because
But
I don't know.
let them, let those
Yes.
people who want to go wingsuit flying, right? I think it's the most dangerous sport in the world, right? They
Yeah,
have like every flight, they have like a 1% chance of dying. Like I think real,
yeah,
like
yeah. It's a
honestly,
very high. I know it's very high.
and and they do it, and they have fun. They are crazy. They are not like us, like the normal people, I would say. But that's
Yeah.
fine. That's not a problem. That's not my problem. That's their problem.
No,
But they don't see it as a
and
problem,
it's
right? It's yeah.
yeah. I'm surprised it's not even banned in the EU yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they're gonna ban wingsuit flying as well. But
Yeah.
anyways, I feel like the philosophy is this, right? They don't accept on a regulation level that some people are not as fit as others to handle a lot of different situations that you face in your life. And if you're going to try to take care of all the people who are in the extreme percentiles of, let's say, non alignment with whatever action it is, right? Whatever situation it is, then you're going to make life very controlled and
And
like,
and what you're doing is you're creating people who are dependent. They become dependent.
of course.
Like the it's the example of the is that in English a helicopter mother? Like
Mm. I
like
haven't heard the helicopter mother.
helicopter mother. It's the mother who does everything for the child.
Yeah, exactly.
They make their sandwiches. If they have a
Yes.
problem, they will help them. And like everything, if they have a problem in school, the mother will come by and he will fix that with his friends.
Yeah, yeah.
And and I think we all know that this kind of a kid will not be a healthy, functioning adult. He will
No, of
not
course
be
not.
self-sufficient. He never learns to be self-sufficient, to trust him in himself, because he will trust
Yeah.
in this other entity, in this mother, right? And I
He will
think,
outsource all the problems.
you know,
And also, like, this is the perfect example. This is why I said, like, it's the mother energy that is given from these Western governments, right? Because you have this, like you say, if a child is in a fight in school with a kid, and one of the children is like, I'm gonna get my mom, like, I'm not even gonna
yeah,
bother trying to understand how to handle kids, right? I'm
yeah,
just gonna
they just
outsource. The
go
mom
to their
comes in
mom,
and
right? They run
fixes.
away, they cry, and they go home, and
Yeah,
then their mom
yeah.
comes and talks
And
with
those
I don't
people
know.
don't become
Yeah,
accountable. They don't have
yeah,
responsibility. They don't know how well to take charge in
right.
the world.
And
And we're
and
going to
if
end
you
up with the
grow up,
same on a societal scale if the
that
government does the same thing.
because they won't be able to fight for themselves against these psychopaths in society, right? Against the terrorists, against the pedophiles, right? Because they are not self-sufficient, they're not strong enough, and therefore you create a weak society where these terrorists and everyone can prosper.
Yeah. And to be honest, though, hypothetical scenario. If you are uh, an quote unquote evil government that wants control over the population, it's a really good strategy to make them
Of
hyper
course.
dependent on you. Because the big benefit that comes from that is that they will not challenge you because they're too dependent on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's simple, right? If the people are hyper dependent, outsource all their issues, all their problems, their safety, their decision making in regular life situations to regulation, laws, government entities, whatever, then how would they ever be able to
Yeah.
internally go against the ideology of the government?
And it becomes a process of interdependence as well, because society becomes dependent on big government, mother government,
Yeah,
and the government grows, and it becomes dependent on a society that is dependent on them. Because if
Yeah,
society becomes less dependent on them, they evaporate, right? Because they're not
of course.
necessary anymore. They lose their jobs, they lose
Yeah,
their authority, they lose, and it
they
becomes
lose all their
just,
commissions and groups
and
and sub organizations and
yeah,
whatever high tens of percents of all their
uh,
members, are not
uh,
like all their actions are not valuable anymore, necessary anymore. Okay, let's bring it a bit more back to privacy and still talk about authority when it comes to privacy. So, okay, we covered a lot about government, right, ideas, but again, we're bringing this. I mean, it's about privacy, right? What happens? Our privacy is shrinking. We have less privacy. We talked about the motivations of the government. So, how do we maybe see the relationship here between privacy for your individual and the government?
yeah. I think fundamentally, as society gives up its privacy, right? As society says, yeah, it's okay to have all this data because I don't care about it, or for whichever other reason, the power of authority automatically increases, right?
Yeah,
Fundamentally, they have the ability to do more, to control more, to yeah, and I think then a lot of people, I think nowadays they trust a lot of the government. I think in the US, it's probably really going down rapidly, both among the left and among the right
yeah.
side. So it's we can trust government today. Probably a lot of people trusted the Obama government, but look how quickly that changed for so many people in the US, right? And nothing says the similar thing cannot happen in the EU if you trust the EU right now. You know, so
Yeah,
therefore, it's a fundamental thing you have to be careful of giving too much power to authority, even if you trust them today.
yeah, for sure. And I think, for me, I feel like I'm very like independent in this sense, right? I would rather not leave my trust to anyone at
Yeah.
all for most things. Okay, and so for me, it's very like I would keep my privacy. I would go back to the privacy that was decades ago, right? For my own sake, and I'd rather not to have the government impose that. But like you say about the U.S., okay, they've maybe never been so trustworthy of the government. Like they've always been a bit, you know, like they have states with some independent power, and it's always been more planned. But in the Europe, I feel like we trust the government a lot, like a
Yes.
lot. And if we think, yeah, they're just increasing their power, they're taking away my power, but it's for the good.
Yeah.
But what then
But
if things
as
flip on the head and the ideology
yeah,
shifts to something you don't like, but now you're deep in this hole of them having taken away your privacy?
I think especially EU power, you know, it is something that is so far away from the average person in the EU, right? They're giving up
Yeah,
so much of their privacy, of their control over their lives. Countries are giving up so much control to this
yeah,
thing that sits far away, and no one really knows even how it functions, how it works. Yet we have so much faith and trust in it. Mm,
and it's also, I mean, even if you're a very pro-democracy person, I don't think the EU is very democratic. I
yes,
like
and there's
they,
so
of
much
course, they
lobbying
have
in the
their
EU, right?
argument, right? They have their arguments of, well, it's delegated authority, right? Because the people there result from the local elections in the country and all
Well,
these arguments. But
well,
let's be honest.
the EU has very few people actually working for it, and big parts of regulation in the EU, they come from lobbyist groups. They are like, we
Yeah,
want to give some kind of regulation for this, and then another party, an external party, an NGO or company group, they come and they say, this is the regulation that we would like to introduce. This is our theory for how it should be implemented. They come really with like a 20, 30, 40-page plan, and then the EU comes and they say like, yeah, that looks good. Maybe a few small changes, poof, that's how it goes through. That's how a lot of the regulation in the EU actually works. And the
mm,
idea is that this works because you have all these lobby groups from different parties coming in. I think a lot of people are even completely unaware of this, right? In one sense,
yeah,
it's very transparent because everything is in the open, right? Every piece of legislation the EU is making, it's all out there in the open. But on the other hand, there are very big lobby groups in the EU, and it's a very important part of it. And yeah,
Yeah, and also
uh,
I think like okay, even if the legislation is out in the open, how can I stop it then?
yeah, exactly.
And
That's
what
a
if I'm
very different.
against it? You know,
I'm
like
not in these NGOs or in these
yeah.
foundations or whatever.
And even then, it seems like you're dependent on the internal power, like in the
Yeah,
internal structure.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, in general, we can look at okay, increased power, right? Um I think everyone should look at it like that. Anything that takes part of your privacy away is you giving up power
yeah.
to whatever
I like
authority
that.
gets that, right? I think that's a good rule. And if you keep that in mind, right, then you got to think, okay, what am I willing to trade my power for? My own power, my power over myself, over my life, over what I can do and can't do. You know, how much power are you giving away? And what are you getting in return? Because nowadays, I feel like if you start asking yourself those questions on a very individual level, you see that a lot of the arguments made by governments, by organizations, whatever, they're like big goals, you know? It's like, you know, reduce child pornography or something, right? Out in the field. And it's like not even connected to your life, to your friend's life, to your town's life, whatever. It's like this big goal out there, and you're giving up the entire power of having a private conversation, right? And
Yeah,
it's like, is that a trade off that you would want to make? And I think you,
I
you
think
should
for me
start
not. And I
thinking
think
like that.
also fundamentally, you know, if you over the longer term, if we stop looking at the here and now about how politics function now, if you want to have a functioning society, a functioning democracy, you need to have this privacy because you know everyone thinks they're on the right side of history.
Yeah,
Everyone believes they're right, and
yeah,
you know over the longer term, you always need to allow the counter narrative to flow. So it's not a thing about personally. If you want to give up this privacy, it's like you cannot because I think it destroys society. You know, it's really
yeah,
fundamental. And on the long term, I think any society that's not free either turns into uh, an authoritarian regime or it collapses. You know,
yeah.
there's a revolution counter ideas. There's
Yeah, it
no,
reaches a breaking point. Or like
yeah,
authoritarianism is the natural end state of the progression, right? And then
yes,
uh, if it ever breaks apart, it's going to be so hard probably because people are not going to rise up until it's very late in the game. And at that point, like you said,
yeah, you
it's
get a
going to
revolution, right, or something
collapse.
collapses
Yeah.
because we become dependent on the system. Yeah,
Yeah. And I like this
uh,
idea. Everyone thinks they're on the right side of history, right? And yeah, you might be right, but
you might also be wrong.
yeah, or like I think there's this things change, right, over time. I mean, you might be the most right now, okay? Fine. You might believe that, and people will believe that. But even if you believe that, you should accept that unless you are adapting, changing your opinions, um, truly understanding all sides of the arguments, then you're likely to be wrong in the future, right? And also,
Yeah,
let's be honest, how many people truly understand society well enough to actually be right? I mean, that's
yeah. And you have right in the short term for your own society. You have right in the long term for
yeah, you're
technology to
right on a
prosper. You
long
have like, you know, what is right depends a lot on what you value. And
yeah, and you have right on a local
therefore,
scale and on a larger scale.
therefore, I like the principle of this freedom for people to change their opinions on what is right. Maybe yesterday you believed, you know, society believes one thing, but because environment changes, because technology changes, this shifts. You know, there is a shift where it's like, no, actually, what I thought was acceptable before. You know, maybe it's about the chat control proposal. You know, maybe before you thought it was okay, but at some point you turn against that. You know,
Yeah,
this needs to be possible to have these conversations in private. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
And also, I would in general just fear that if you've given all your power to the government and the government has a certain ideology, then, will you even be allowed to express the countering opinion? And I think we can mention briefly, at least, like hate speech. You know,
Mm-hmm.
hate
Yeah.
speech is one of those loaded terms nowadays where I don't know for sure, but like I know that a lot of laws came in place after World War II, like with a lot of things. Uh, that hate speech is like, well, of course, you couldn't be anti-Jewish or something like that, and it was also a lot about you uh, can't. What is it? I forget the word, but like demand violence. Not you can't
Inside.
incite violence. Yes, uh, or you yeah,
Yeah.
anything that is clearly like a threat to a
Yeah.
person's life or a
Yeah.
threat for violence against the person, these
Yeah.
things are
Right.
considered hate speech.
And I think this makes a lot of sense because in order for conversation to flourish, right? In order for the non-violent democratic ideal that we all have to work, we cannot just kill our neighbor because we don't agree with him, right? The idea is that we should have conversations and therefore be able to come closer to one another. And I think therefore it makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense that these threats, right, are not allowed. Because if you allow these kinds of things, then I don't think you have a society anymore. Your society is already
maybe.
falling apart if you get to that point.
But is it so bad? Like, what
I
if you have full free speech?
I mean, I think at that point, the point where you allow that stuff, I think this ideal of a society is already starting to fall apart now. Because the
Maybe.
idea is that in a society we're all able to get along well enough that we don't have to threaten someone with death. If I don't agree with you politically, that's fine. It's not a problem. Let's talk about it. But
Yeah, fair. Fair. That's a good point. We can do it should be talked about, but in a civilized manner or something like that, or according to certain values, certain principles.
mm,
And I also think just last on that if you are a person of influence, right? If you have followers, then which a lot of people do nowadays,
yeah,
then you in like if you say I want that person to die,
yeah,
someone might actually do it, even though you're
uh-huh,
not going to do it. And that responsibility, that's the with power comes great responsibility. Like you have the
yeah,
power to influence what other people do, and therefore you are responsible for their actions to a certain degree or how you present yourself to them. Um,
yeah,
but
I agree.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah, um,
I also think with hate speech that we're like I said, it's a loaded term, right? Because I feel like the
yeah,
range is increasing there. Um,
yeah, because it should be possible to say things, like I don't like this group of people, or I think this group of
yeah,
people has these negative aspects in society that we should be careful of.
yeah,
Whatever. These are all things that we should be able to do. We should be able to talk about race. We should be able to talk about religion freely, be
yeah.
able to criticize it. That's necessary for democracy to function. Because
Of
if you
course,
don't
it's
do that,
necessary.
people repress these thoughts, and then you get real violence.
Yeah, and also from a principle standpoint, I mean, you can talk bad about criminals, right?
Yeah.
So, like you can talk badly about them, no
You can
matter
talk
what
badly
kind of
about white
criminals.
man.
Yeah, yeah, you can talk badly about white people. You can talk badly
Yeah.
about, a certain,
Yeah.
like a lot of groups of people, and it makes sense, right?
It's
Imagine
good.
you were being monitored when you talk to your children all the time, and you say like, "Watch out for the guys in the vans. They are bad people. Stay away from them." Right? We don't like them. We hate them. If you
Yes.
say something like that to your child,
Yeah.
at some
Yeah.
point that will be illegal to say if
Yeah.
you follow the same principles as you can't say
Yeah.
something bad about a culture, about a
Yeah.
people, about whatever other characteristics you want to
Yeah.
use. Um,
For sure. You need
so I
that
think the
to
argument is
distinguish.
bad.
But yeah. Yeah, right. It's a nuanced topic, and at some point you have
Yeah,
the law that interferes, right? Like with real pedophilia, right? You can say to your children, we don't like the people in the vans. You have to be careful of them, right? Like be careful, don't take candy, whatever. But
yeah,
if they actually do it, right, you don't have to say kill them. You say this is against the law because theoretically we should have laws for these really things and for these things
yeah.
where it gets, you know,
Of course.
and well,
I mean, to be fair, if you're in a bad situation, you can say a lot of things. I'm not against
yeah,
people
some
in a tough situation using words that are extreme. It's not like I
yeah,
want to,
of course,
yeah,
yeah.
monitor people's
Anyways, I
language
think
in a difficult situation. That's
I think we're getting into some really small things now, but I think overall,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think we've made the
yeah.
point clear. Um, do you want to talk about the future of um the future of privacy and where the current state of the world is going if we just extrapolate into the future, if we see that compared to before the Second World War, after the Second World War, how after 9/11 we got more privacy inhibiting rules. During COVID we saw the e-privacy derogation temporarily being introduced. Now we see the chat control proposal. We have programmable money, central bank digital currencies that can be implemented. Yeah, where do you see this going if we don't do anything?
Dystopian hell.
Yes, I kind of just yeah, dystopian
Yeah, to
hell.
be honest.
Explain.
Okay, let me elaborate. Now, I think, yeah, if we look at what has happened, what is happening, it's only going one direction. It's shrinking your world. It's shrinking your sphere of privacy. There is more insights being gathered on you. You're being tracked more, monitored more, and it's all for the benefit of the power of a government or a private organization. None of it is benefiting me. I mean, the government can use whatever arguments they want to say that it's in my benefit for them to monitor me 24/7, but I don't agree. And if we look towards the future, following the same principles of argument, the same values that lie underneath the implementations, it will lead to zero privacy.
Yeah,
That's the end goal.
that's
I mean, that's,
yeah. I'm
and
afraid
it's
of
the
the same
same
thing for me.
arguments.
It's I think it's the same. If we continue on this path, we will have less privacy in all areas of life, and it will, it only gets more intrusive. You have a Google Home in your home, you have a smartwatch, you have, you're being tracked everywhere. You have your mobile phone with you. Soon we're gonna have implants. It's only gonna get more intrusive, and we really have to take control over this narrative. I think, we have
Yeah,
to find a way to return our privacy to fight back
yeah,
against this. Um,
and
yeah.
that's such a, like, can we return privacy? I want it back. I want the government to stop monitoring me. I want private companies to stop gathering all this data
Yeah,
from me.
uh,
Like,
yeah,
but it's in their motivation to do the opposite. I mean, it's inherent in their objectives, right? It aligns with where they want to go. So
if
you feel like you're, one person versus the big dog, and
yeah, and I think also what we already talked about a bit, right? It's the crisis creep. There are
yeah,
some a crisis occurs, then there are more intrusive regulations. Afterwards, some of them get removed and some of them stay, and we move on with life. And it's way harder to reverse this policy because we have also become dependent on these policies. If like our whole society is built on the fact that Google and Facebook extract so much data from us, it's way harder to reverse this, but we have to, and I think that's the challenge for all of us together to fight back.
yeah, I agree. And also, it's this sense that, like what you say about crisis creep, doesn't go the other way, right?
Yeah,
Because the
there's
people
no
or the
freedom
group
creep,
in,
right?
no, there isn't, because the group in power, like, even if they
Selbstständig.
don't need the control, they will take it, right? They will keep it. because they feel either more confident that they do have control, right? Or it will be useful at some point, or, I mean, in general, again, anything that is private is inherently risky in some sense for the government, to whatever, stop criminals,
Yeah.
or stop whatever else is illegal.
There is this
So,
inherent thing about the riskiness of any privacy in society. Any
yeah,
privacy poses a risk to government because they don't know what could be going on there. They don't know
yeah,
if there's a terrorist brooding, if there's a
yeah,
dissident, if there is. Yeah, I think this is a
exactly.
very, very valid
And
point.
so if they know then that, okay, through crisis creep, right? There are some crisis, they get some more control over another domain, right? More insight, less privacy for the people in a certain domain. Even if it was for a crisis, why would they ever give it up? Because now they feel like they control that domain, and it's better for the overarching goal of less risky domains, right? So
Yeah,
it's really,
yeah,
it's so counter to the motivations of government that it
yeah.
almost seems we would have to shift the
I
objectives of
agree.
government in order for that, like, freedom creep to follow.
Yeah, but I don't think you can. You, I think the way to fight back against this is for each one of us to value privacy.
Yeah,
We really have to value it, and I think we have to value it over the convenience that some of these other things are giving us. There's a lot of
yeah,
convenience in, you know, your software being free, right? We all have a free Gmail account,
yeah,
but Gmail is scanning all of our data. They are
yeah,
learning, they're training their AI models off of our platform. They are sharing our data with intelligence services. Uh, we need to pay for these kinds of services with something else than our data. Because if we're paying with our data, we are reducing our privacy and therefore increasing the power of government, of authority. Um,
yeah. It's it's hard, and you need to almost teach children about it, right? Because inherently, who are the people in government? I mean, maybe they don't care about privacy. You need everyone to care about privacy. You need it to be a fundamental right. You need it to be a fundamental value of the people, where the
yeah,
government can self-regulate itself to not breach a certain
yeah.
level of privacy.
Okay. You have the force of this crisis creep, right, of the government control,
Yeah,
and you need to have a counterbalancing force that goes in opposite opinion, and then you create a nice balance. But if this force from the bottom is gone, then you go into a totalitarian state,
yeah.
totalitarian regime.
And just to touch on a very nefarious point about crisis creep, if it's in your motivation if your objective is to implement something, and crises are the best time to do so, then it's also in your motivation to create crises.
Yeah, that's the very dark side of the same coin, right? That's
Exactly. It's like,
yes,
find a new statistic that sounds really bad, really,
yeah,
and use that to implement your thing. Make
yeah.
people worried about a statistic that you never cared about before, about a measurement that you never
Blow
cared
it
about
up,
before.
market it, right?
Exactly. Market it, make it a thing, and then you can justify your, um, you know,
You know,
power, like, whatever,
yeah,
privacy, and also taking away people's power.
yeah. And I think this also gets into, it's really easy to market something like this. If you are the only person talking about something, it's easy to spin a story, to create a story.
Yeah,
And if people have never thought about it before, people have never thought about the importance of privacy, it's very easy to convince them that it's not so important. You have nothing to hide, right? I think this is like nothing to hide. It's become this thing that no one has really thought about. But what do you mean nothing to hide? Like, okay, maybe I have nothing to hide, but that does not mean that I'm willing to give some central authority all that power over my
no.
life. Maybe my neighbor has something to hide, you know?
Yeah, and also
It's such
nothing
a
to hide. I don't trust you. you know, you don't. You don't own
yeah,
me. You
yeah,
don't own my data. Why, as a human being on planet Earth,
yeah,
this idea that the government should have so much power over you is an invention, right? It's not. It's not a reality thing. It's an invention that we have. It's
then
part of our ideology. It's part of our view of the world. and it can change, and it has changed over time. And is it changing for your better or is it changing for your worse? That's something you should ask yourself. And again, I think we touched on it a little bit in last episode, right? But this idea that we think right now we are so right, like we're in progressing, right? We're much better than before, but there are things that change for the worse of your own individual over time. And so, can you, um, can you detach yourself from the ideology that thinks everything is on the right path to try to see it more objectively? And for privacy, it's crucial.
Yeah, and it's becoming harder and harder to detach yourself, right? I think,
Yeah,
like, in order to even live a normal life, right, you kind of have to use WhatsApp. At least where I live, if I
yeah,
don't have WhatsApp, if I don't have a mobile phone that's always tracking me, even if I have pretty much everything turned off,
yeah,
I can't really. I I have to give up this privacy. Like, there are a lot of methods to reduce it, but I think there's a long way to go to really
yeah,
take control back of our privacy, of our digital footprint. It's mine. It's not from some company or whatever.
yeah,
I'm doing work. Therefore, I pay for the government. I pay for all. I should have control over my data.
yeah.
Uh,
And there are, like you say, you need to use a phone, but companies could produce, and there are some that produce anonymous phones, right? Or anonymous versions of Android operating system, or anonymous text messaging apps, right?
yeah,
So it's not like it's technologically impossible to live in a world where the online world is private, right? Or almost fully private. That's not
yeah,
impossible. Of course, there are some very difficult things like internet. You're dependent on connecting to towers and routers and
yeah,
cables, right? Everything is through cables. So if the cables are tapped and the encryption is,
yeah.
you know,
But therefore, there should be, on with these things, they should be audited. That this stuff is not centralized, like that. That only really
for
anonymous
example,
data is centralized. Like, you can come up with lots of great things to make it good, but you
mhm.
really have to put a lot of thought into it, and yeah,
And it needs to
see
be a
it as,
societal value, objective,
yeah.
right?
And
It
also
really
government.
needs
It
to
needs to
be.
be, every government official should be aware of this, and should be fighting for the privacy of the people wherever it's possible.
Yeah.
Hold on. Oh,
Yeah. I also just wanted to mention some specifics, because I feel like okay, we talk about all this privacy. What can we do maybe, and what is actually um, taking away our privacy right now? And just to rip off some examples, right? You have GPS and location trackers. You can turn it on and off on your phone. A lot of people don't turn it off. It's tracking your location 24/7 very
yeah.
accurately.
Though even if you turn it off, your mobile data, if you're connected to cell towers, you're
Exactly.
still being tracked.
So exactly. So even if you turn it off, the especially easy example is if your Wi-Fi is on, then your Wi-Fi is always beaming out to every router. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
And based on the router location, you can map out exactly where you're tracking yourself.
Mhm. And
Um,
I think one more thing, right, is it's like levels of how hard you're making it for people to track you, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Because there's one level even above having your GPS on, right? There's a feature in Google Maps, which I think a lot of people have turned on without realizing it, that automatically tracks where you've been in order to be able to give you personalized advertisements. There's a
Yeah.
feature, you can turn it on, you can turn it off. Go to your Google settings and look through the
Yeah.
privacy settings. There's a lot of things you can turn off, and then it's better. It won't be perfect, but it will be better. Same with,
Exactly.
there's like this feature with Apple, where I know I don't personally have one, but a lot of people, they know they can always see online where their friends are, right?
Yeah. The
They
Find My
can,
Phone.
yeah, and they always have it turned on without thinking about it, right? Which is also, you are giving
Yeah.
up a lot of your data, and you are saying, take it, please. You are not
Yeah.
even trying to hide anything. Uh,
No.
yeah,
and there are features like this as well, right? Like see where your friends are all the time. Share your location with your friends so they can always know where you are.
Mhm.
Maybe they can save you if you're in a bad spot. Whatever her
Yeah,
arguments.
yeah.
But yeah, make it hard is the general argument, and you see the same with
Mhm.
cookies, right? You're asked, especially because of GDPR now, you're always asked to accept or reject. Always reject. Why would you ever
Yeah,
accept?
yeah.
Like, just
Ex-
reject the cookies
Accept the
and do the
essential ones,
same.
deny everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And do the same in your browser settings, right? Go to the browser settings and turn on some restriction for ad blockers and trackers across
I think
websites.
that's really, really essential because this
Yes.
it blocks out so much of the crap online. Like you don't
Yeah,
realize how many different sites are contacted. You get a good ad blocker, like I
exactly.
think 90% of online tracking is just gone.
Yeah,
You
get
know?
a good ad blocker. There are
Yeah,
plenty in every browser plugin store, and it's also like cookies is one thing, right? But the Meta Pixel, Facebook Pixel, tries to track you cross sites by having a pixel inserted on the website. So they try to avoid cookies, right? To
yeah.
try to track you instead. So
And this is
just
automatically blocked by the ad blocker. They just say,
exactly
no,
get a good ad blocker.
uh, yeah,
Really crucial.
this is one of the best things you can do. Maybe the best, honestly.
Yeah, because most of your traffic is online, right? And I think
Yeah,
like if you try to minimize location sharing on your phone and then you do the
uh,
then the browser and the internet traffic is the most other thing. And obviously there is the example of what you do put out onto the internet, right? uh,
yeah,
and how you interact with all the apps you have. I mean, all your apps are going to have some kind of privacy setting, maybe most of them. Why not turn it on? On ChatGPT or Grok or whatever AI tool, do you allow them to train using your data? Right? It's a setting, on or off, and it's
yeah.
on by
Me,
default.
me personally,
And
I'm not even ever logged in. Like I just, if I need,
yeah,
like, if I use it, I'm not logged in because I don't need to. If they force me to log in, I'll create some account. But uh,
exactly.
I just don't like them having, because especially with AI models, LLMs, you are giving so much of your personal thoughts, right? These conversations, they are really
Yeah,
core to who you are. And
yeah,
well, I would rather not have a personalized account of me, not because I have something to hide, but because I don't know. I don't want to give up that power.
yeah.
You know?
And they will still have the data, right? That's one of the crucial things is that uh, they will have the data. They can analyze you. They know who you are. They find out who you are as a person. They might know you deeper than you know
Yeah.
yourself for certain
Yeah.
things. And they will have that data forever. They will know that forever. And they will also just try to expand, the domain of things they gather about you. So I think there's this certain level of behavior that is kind of you should be aware of it. Are you sharing your personal info online?
Yeah.
How much is tied to accounts you have? Um,
Well,
and
like
how
another thing that I'm doing is usually when I watch YouTube, I have a separate application that scrapes YouTube and it throws away all the junk. I'm not
yeah,
logged into YouTube. There's just a list of accounts that I'm subscribed to, and I watch
yeah,
there. And YouTube knows nothing about me, but what I watch.
yeah. I enter most websites in incognito unless I have
It's
to
also
you
yeah,
know use my account for something specific. Like even
yeah,
if I open a news website, why not just go to an incognito window, open the news website, reject cookies, read the site, close it, and you know that none of it was tracked close to you. Except unless you also forget including that VPN is one of the big the big talking points, I guess, nowadays in privacy enhancing tools, right? I think in general, not all VPNs are good. You should definitely pay for it, as
yeah,
with everything. Pay for a
yeah. If you
service,
don't pay, you're the
and
product.
exactly,
But I have a very like VPNs. You have to really trust the company because this VPN is now going to have access to all your data, right? All
yeah,
your data is flowing through these servers of this VPN. They're able to track everything you do through this VPN. This VPN can track which websites you're visiting, etc. Right? Sure, the encrypted connections they cannot see. They cannot see more than the network operator would be able to see, but you are trusting them with the same things that you are normally trusting your network operator with. right? With the advantage that then you're trusting the next party in line less, right? Because now YouTube, for example, will think that you are the VPN. So instead of YouTube, you're trusting your VPN. That's
Yeah,
fundamentally how this works, which
yeah,
can be good, can be worse, depends.
yeah. Depends. But I think still it's a good general recommendation. I think at least. But make sure to do your research before you enter it. Um, yeah, I mean these are like the most common things, I guess,
Uh,
for
yeah,
privacy.
and it's
Be
about
aware of
being,
it.
yeah, I think this is the main thing. Be aware of it, and then give up your data if it's unnecessary. No,
Yeah,
realize that nothing to hide doesn't make sense. We all want to hide as much as possible from the authorities
yeah. It's
because
the classic argument. Like, would you have cameras in your house being
you know
watched by the government
right.
since you have nothing
Would you
to
have them in
hide?
your bedroom? You
Yeah,
know,
in your bedroom, would you have a
like
mic in every room?
yeah,
Would you want that? And
yeah,
you will still, it feels weird, right?
yeah,
But you have nothing to hide, so it's the
yeah.
same thing. I mean,
Well, maybe in
just
10 years, people will think this is normal to have
hope
government
so.
cameras in your house.
I know. I thought you meant to use to always use the privacy tools.
Yeah, I hope that.
I hope
But
that.
I think the dystopian society, right?
Yeah,
It's the one where there are cameras in your bedroom, sending data
yeah,
to the government servers, being analyzed by AI models to see if you're having sex with a child. Like that's the dystopian future. Uh,
yeah.
and
Or tracking
well,
your
I'm not.
movement all the time, right? Where you are 24/7, having full control of it,
Yeah,
and being able to use that at any moment in time for any purpose.
there are lots of things we can do, and I think in some ways the consensus might be shifting a bit. I know like Louis Rossman on YouTube. He's talking a lot about privacy. He has really really good takes on it. He's really an expert, and I think we should all be really aware of it. And I think then you know like this in the EU there is. There are countries who don't want to implement this chat control because they are
Yeah,
aware of the risk of privacy um, violation.
yeah. I mean, it's the general thing, right? Try to voice it, right? Try to voice it to your friends, to yourself. Try to learn about it and be aware of it. And well, it's a boring thing. Oh, it's such a boring argument, or it's such a boring suggestion where it's like, yeah, we should raise the general awareness of this issue, and then it'll fix itself.
Yeah,
And
we should.
most
That's the truth.
likely, yeah. Well, I'm
It's
not sure that's going to help. Depends on the motivations of the people in power or the government. But
well,
at
we need to
least,
raise awareness, and if you raise enough awareness, democracy starts to function because we still live in we live in democratic societies. If we all start caring about privacy, make it a topic on the political agenda. Make parties vote on parties who care about privacy. Who put it on their agenda.
yeah.
That's
Do
how
we
you do
live in
this. You
democratic
know?
societies anymore?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of democratic processes in place everywhere, and yeah, it's truly possible. Changing the consensus.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
Yeah,
Become aware of it. Try to speak about it, and if you're involved in like local government or anything like this, voice it. Say it. Like
yes,
bring it up when they talk about chat control or anything anti-privacy. Bring it up. Fight it. Stand against it, and come up with arguments for why it's wrong.
I
Um,
thought,
we have to stand up at some point, right? And we don't want to end up in this dystopian future that might result from the continuation along the same path. So something has to happen. Something has to
I
change.
think, yeah, and that can also start by using platforms which care about your privacy. Which don't try to make you the product like acarm.com.
Exactly. Great point. I, we care about privacy, as you might have been able to tell from our conversation here, and we do the same for Akarum. We don't want it to be a data hoarding platform at all. We want to avoid that at all costs. We want to make it better for you, focused on the individual, focused on people, not aligned with what seems to be what the vast majority of governments and organizations are doing with regards to data and lack of privacy.
Yeah.
So please visit a Carm and go
Uh-huh.
write something
Do it.
cool. Join, write something interesting. We'll be
Yeah.
happy to have you there. And with that, I
Yeah.
think it's time to say
Uh-huh.
bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you all
Bye
for
bye.
listening to another episode,
Yeah.
and
Thank you for listening.
see you next week again on the next episode. We have
Yeah.
a lot of plans now for the coming weeks. Not sure what next week will be, but we have many good topics to talk about.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
we'll just keep getting better. So
Uh-huh.
it's all good. Can't wait for next week. Hope to see you there as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, looking forward to next week.